1.4 at 6 incline. For 2 miles. Okay. What will I talk about today? What do I want to talk about today? So I was talking earlier about sometimes you have to say it to see it. Okay? And how we tell on ourselves. And how it's actually a gift. When you tell on yourself, it gives you an opportunity to see what you currently were possessed by, to see where you create an opposition so you can better integrate it. Wholeness, right, is the goal, is the mission, it's the game. Oh yeah, I was listening to a video where the guy was talking about women, and women have this deep-seated fear of being too much, and that feels pretty accurate. And then he said how men have like the opposite fear of not enough. I thought that was a very accurate assessment. But it also shows how, so he's saying how, you know, a man should be able to allow and accept whatever storm, whatever mood, whatever state a woman is in, right? And I see that, you know, that dynamic that's played out externally through relationships, in the world, the macrocosm, right? If you have the eyes to look, you can see how that same dynamic is also happening within your little mini microcosm of yourself as a universe. And like this idea of the masculine and the feminine poles and how they are kind of tensions, right? But if you think about that as if your masculine energy, right? How does your masculine treat your feminine? How does your husband treat your wife internally in your own little universe? And I can kind of see that dynamic playing out just in my body of the masculine being the mind. Like you can kind of look at the masculine as the mind, the feminine as like the body. And how the mind will use the body to serve its own goals, right? So sacrifice the body, sacrifice your taking care of your vessel on the altar of the head, right? The mind, thinking. And I can see that also in like leadership roles. It's like a very parasitic type of relationship. I feed on you to survive, right? It's like we're not serving one purpose. It's either we're all serving this one purpose of this one aspect, the mind, and you're being used to serve that purpose, sacrifice to feed. You know, like there's that whole notion of feeding parasites. And you think about how the mind sacrifices the body, taking care of the body, moving the body, to just sit and feed the mind. Think, analyze, separate, dissect, while you sacrifice the body, sacrifice the feminine, use the feminine energy to serve the masculine mind. You know, like the whole, so many different ways you could look at it. And it's like, but also, okay, so say you want to start working out, right? Like right now, I'm still not feeling it. I'm not, my mood is not really like, yes, let's go, you know, but it's like, there's this sort of realizing like a duty, a responsibility that I have to my body now, that I'm not gonna neglect. But the interesting thing about that, right, it's like, you would think that the body, wanting to take care of the body, that you would feel like it. So there's almost like this, why wouldn't you feel like it if it's serving the body now? How come the feelings aren't like feeling like doing it? It's almost like the feelings have been hijacked by the mind. And the mind is thinking it doesn't want to, so the feelings are following that, and it's almost like in cahoots to sacrifice the body, which I find very interesting. And like, what's up with that? But anyways, so just thinking how, okay, I don't feel like doing it. I don't really want to do it. I'd rather be doing something else. But there's this force that's like, just get it done. And you don't have to love it. You don't have to be super enthused by it. You know, it reminds me of like telling my kids, right, to do their chores or whatever. And they don't want to do it. And it's like, you cannot control their state. All you can control is actions, right? So it's like, okay, you don't want to do the chores. You have to do it, but you don't have to feel like doing it. You just have to get it done, right? It's like honoring both sides. It's like the action is the action. You got to do what you got to do, while letting yourself and letting it be okay that you don't feel like it, and letting that be fine. You don't have to love it, you just have to do it, right? It's honoring both sides. Not letting the feeling dictate the action. Having the action do what it needs to do. Letting the mind feel what it wants to feel. Letting the emotions feel what it wants to feel, and just allowing this like, this swirl. The body's gonna do it. The mind is like, I don't really feel like it. The feelings is kind of following the mind as like the leader, right? Like the feelings is like, okay, you don't want to do it. I don't feel like doing it either, right? It's almost kind of like, it's like an enabler when you think about it. The feelings hijacked by the mind is almost like that enabler. Like the empath and the narcissist. The narcissist is the mind. It's like, I want this, and the enabler feels for it and will let the feeling serve that aspect, and like, okay, we're all going to go over with the ship. But it's like, You think about that, right? With a narcissistic relationship, you can see these enablers, and it's almost like you can step out of it and just think like, how the heck can someone fall into that trap? How can they let themselves feel bad for that? Like, you know, there's that whole aspect of it. But when you bring it down into your own little mini microcosm, you can kind of see, right? Like in this one little experience, okay, gotta work out. Mind doesn't feel like it. Mind rather be doing something else. Feeling is gonna, in essence, enable the mind by going along with it. Well, that's just my partner, like that whole, that's your father, like, these enabling relationships, how they can allow this mistreatment, right? They're mistreating the body, but it's like, it's almost like the body's gonna have to have a mind of its own and gonna do what it's gonna do, because actually the actions can actually dominate when you think about it. So in essence, we always give our mind authority. The mind's going to determine what the body does, and the mind's going to determine what feelings are going to follow the mind, like a leader. And it's like, the mind can be like the dad, the feelings can be like the mom that enables the dominant dad, and then the body is like the child that gets sacrificed, because they're both serving this like unaware purpose, and the body can see how that's wrong, where that's unfair, or whatever, right? It's interesting. So whenever you say a dynamic playing out on the stage of life, right? All the world's a stage, all the men and women merely players, right? If you look at the stage of life, you can look at the election, you can look at people who identify with either sides, and how people are showing how they can't lose, they get unhinged, all the hate that they feel is getting portrayed onto them, they project it out. Like, you can see this whole thing playing out. And it's like, it's easy to step back and be like, oh my God, look at that, they're so crazy. But until you can actually look at that, bring it home, and see where you have the tendency to do the same thing, like, you're gonna have to do some digging, because it's not gonna be obvious. Certain aspects might be obvious, certain dynamics that you might have in your bigger microcosm, or maybe like your personal relationships. Until you bring it all the way home to your own little personal mini microcosm, then you can see these dynamics. Where am I an enabler to my one-tracked narcissistic mind that just wants one thing, willing to sacrifice everything else for that one thing? And like, if you look long enough, you'll find it. Like just for instance right now, like I can kind of see, right, because I was thinking about how your thoughts, right? I don't feel like doing this right now. So I don't want to, so I'm thinking about it, I don't want to do it. My feelings are following my thoughts. Like a good wife, obedient. She's following her husband, who doesn't want to do it, now she doesn't feel like doing it either, enabling. And then what happens to the body when the mind and feelings and actions, they're a trinity, right? A tri-unity. They're actually all separate, but when you're acting unconsciously, they end up syncing up, and they could end up syncing up into what you don't want. So you let your thinking, I don't want to do it. Feelings gonna follow, yeah, I don't feel like doing it either. Body's gonna follow, okay, fuck it then, we're not gonna do it. But an object in motion stays in motion until it's interrupted by an outside force, right? Something's gotta come in to interrupt that pattern. And on one aspect, it's gonna have to do it. I think you can think all you want about how you're gonna change. Say, I want to work out. You're thinking about it. I want to do it. How come your feelings doesn't always follow with it? Like your feelings could be like, well, I don't want to do it. So like, what is that? I want to do it, I don't feel like doing it. Oh, fuck it, I don't want to do it then. Yeah, I don't want to do it. Okay, we're not going to do it. Okay, all together. I want to, but I don't want to. Who's going to win? You're thinking you want to, but you're feeling like you don't. Can you really separate feeling and thought? If you can't, say they always follow, say they're tethered, they're married, then what is that feeling that wants to if it actually doesn't want to? Like if the feeling says it doesn't want to, and somewhere secretly the mind also says it doesn't want to, but you have this urge of like, man, I want to start working out. Like, where is that coming from? Is that coming from the body then? Is that coming from the actions? I know Gurdjieff talks about the different centers, right? The emotional center, the thinking center. I gotta look into his work more again. But I was reading Thinking and Destiny, or Destiny and Thinking, I forget what it was. And he's talking about the different aspects, the doer in the body. So it's like we're the doer in the body. And then there's the thinker and the knower, and they're outside of the body. And they're always waiting for the doer in the body to get on board to do whatever it needs to do, whatever. Like, you know, when you have these conflicting ideologies or these conflicting theories or explanations, you can kind of get, which one is it? You can kind of get in that whole space of being uncomfortable in confusion. And it just reminds me again of my North Node in Gemini. And if you're to look at Gemini and Sagittarius, that opposition, it's like a uncertainty versus knowing, confusion versus clarity, right? And I'm very, very comfortable, like almost obsessively clingy to clarity. And I feel very uncomfortable in confusion. And then like trying to put myself out there, right? Like trying to do the things that I feel like I'm being called to do. Wow, everyone on the outside is saying, no, you have to be an authority. No, you have to project your expertise. Like all this kind of crap, right? It conflicts with this feeling I get pulled to do, where it's like, I can very much lean into this authority figure thing, but that's not what I feel like I'm being called to do. It's too comfortable. And it's not serving my destiny, which I feel like is Gemini in the North Node in the 11th house, which is to communicate big ideas in concrete, very specific terms to help not just myself, but the collective, like that whole pull, which if it were up to me, I'll be just doing it in my own little world. But there's like a pull, like a compulsion to share, to communicate, to express, but doing it in a Gemini way, which is not knowing, it's just considering, it's curious, like that whole thing. I just feel, shit. I feel very, what if I remove it here? Would this be too, I feel like that would probably be terrible. You'll probably feel like, oh shit. My bad. I shouldn't have touched it. So if my head comes up to like above there, what does it look like? I guess it'll be okay. whatever. See, it's being comfortable in not knowing, being comfortable in the unknown, in the figure it out. But it's so crazy, you would hear like so much different voices, external voices, advice from people who built brands and built whatever. You hear them tell you how nobody wants to hear how you're confused. Nobody wants to hear your thought process. It's like, give me answers, give me solutions. Like, I feel like that just totally goes opposite of where I feel my North Node is calling me to do, which makes me wonder, is that part of the reason why it's in my North Node? It's like this pull to do different from what is being projected and explained as the right way. Like, it's very syncing it up to be such a challenge and such a, are you going to trust the call, or are you going to assess the call against what the world is showing you, you know? I don't know. But I feel like ever since learning about the North Node in Gemini, it gives me a little bit more comfort, I guess you could say, in the fact that it's, first of all, it's uncomfortable. So when you know that what you're being called to do is uncomfortable, you don't have this delusion that it's supposed to be comfortable, or, oh, it's uncomfortable, that means it's wrong, means I'm not doing it correctly, means I made a mistake, right? It's like knowing that, no, I'm actually being called to sit in confusion. Like, what? For someone who cannot stand confusion, it's a hard ask. And then, like, what do you do with that? Like, what do you do sitting in confusion and leaning more into confusion? And, like, how does that serve the collective? I don't know. I can't see that. But I do know that that's the call. Not only do I see it in the chart, not only do I feel it in my bones, like that whole Sagittarius know-it-all energy. Well, I would have never known that was me until I learned about the South and North Node. But now that I know, it's like, what a missing piece that I never had that explains so much. And to accept the call to adventure, the call to the North Node, right? Like, to unite the opposites, student and teacher, clarity, confusion, like one and many, like to merge that while sharing it to the collective. Like, I don't know, it's not clear, but it's kind of like this journey, right? Right now, my mind doesn't know. My feelings kind of like going with my mind. Like, I don't see how this is going to work. I don't see how being in confusion and allowing myself to feel confusion and sharing my confusion with the collective could help anybody. Like, I can't see that. But it's like honoring the cause, just to be more the doer in the body and to just do it. Like, you're not going to know how it's going to pan out. You're not going to know what effect it's going to have. But it's like the call is clear. The path is not clear. The reasoning is not clear. The logic, like how it's going to fit in, how it's going to help, how is it going to serve, that's all unclear. The only thing that's clear is the action. Sitting into that energy, that confusion, allowing yourself to communicate that on the 11th house collective internet, right? That's the only thing I have clarity on. And so here I am on day 2, moving, working out, and sharing my confusion, sharing my uncertainty. And it's like, in a way, by sharing my uncertainty and where I'm at, while moving my body, like moving the energy, like getting the stagnant energy that when I just sit and think, it just sits and stagnates, right? It's like to be in dynamic flow while communicating where I'm at, uncertainty, confusion. And it's like every time I get clarity, it gets ripped away. That's the crazy thing too about it. It's like this whole notion too of gifts and then getting taken away. Like, it's played out in my whole life. Like, I can never hold on to things. That's what it feels like. It's like you can get something, but you're gonna lose it. You get this happy moment, but it fades away. It's like this constant, mutable events playing out. And like, I feel like maybe the call is to get comfortable with the ever-changingness of things. Stop trying to land things and hold them and cling to them. You know, allowing them to move and flow, right? It's like Sagittarius wants freedom. Like, it wants its freedom more than anything. But yet, it kind of wants to pin things down. Like, one truth. Like, I don't know, there's something about that. It just feels that playing out. Like, I can get clarity one day. I just feel like, oh my gosh, like, oh, like everything is clear. And then the next day it's cloudy again. It's like staticky. And it's like, what the hell? I lost it again. And it's like that journey of clarity to confusion to clarity, like, it seems to be the eternal pattern playing out. And maybe that call is to get comfortable in the constant flow. But yet I have a Taurus sun. Mercury is in Taurus, which is the ruler of Gemini. So it's like, maybe like that's why I just want to like pin down the communication. Don't want to make it solid. You know, there's that, just in general, you know, Earth is very solid. Roots, foundation. Landing it, growing it, still solid, right? And having my nodes in a mutable energy. Challenging, you know? Not to say that mine is any more challenging than anybody else's. And like, that's the thing too, like, I realized I had a little argument with my hubby and my son the other night. And I was like, certain things that I just came wholeheartedly, like, I know this, and you're this, and I'm this, you know, like, so solid, very Sagittarius. I was like, I had to fully lean into and literally fall on my face with these certain declarations that it made me see how one-sided it can be. It's like whole, you're whole, but you're only a hole in that hole. If you're fully that whole of a whole possessed, right? You can only see from that perspective. You're whole in that hole, right? And it's like language even shows this. It almost looks like a trick was played. Like, that's how the certain explanations will show this tilt of like, oh, it was used against you. And it's like, by who, right? Like, who's they? When you think about it, there's a they in you. It's like a mind, serve the mind, and they are against the body and want to suppress, you know, like, you can see these dynamics played out in your tiny little microcosm if you have the eyes to see it. And it's like, once you can see that, you can see that that's the only place you can control it. You can only tweak the little things in your own little tiny microcosm. But it's like, what if you tweak these little things in you and you can see that shift reflected outside in that shift? Like, what if that's the game? And also with Gemini and the North Node, it's like, you look at the trees instead of the forest. The Sagittarius is like the forest, the horizon, like the whole thing, the all. And then Gemini is like the individual, the tree, the details, the here and now, the ground, sky, ground. You know, it's like that whole, I feel very much more comfortable in the forest, the sky, the vast, but it's like, it's not necessarily calling you to put that away. It's like calling you to bring that perspective into the small, the detail, the specifics, and making it concrete, making abstract concrete. Like, I feel pulled to do that, but it's not as comfortable. Like, I can talk abstractly very easily, but I mean, you're not here to live an easy life. You're here to be fulfilled, to feel purpose, to feel meaning. And that only comes in discovering things you don't currently know, or in playing with these aspects that you're not quite familiar and comfortable with. Like, that's wholeness. When you're very one-sided on your South Node, you have to focus on the North Node to bring that access to equilibrium. And that's probably where the focus of this lifetime seems to be directed, based on what I hear about the nodes, about evolutionary astrology, archetypal astrology, just looking at archetypes in general, psychology, my own personal observations of my traits. Like, I can see all that playing out in all these different levels, like, and seeing, okay, if that's what that is, you address it here. You don't go out there and try and fix that and try and stop this person and do, like, you can't affect that. It's just, it's projection. It's reflection. So, it reminds me of like Stoicism, right? Where you control what you can control. And you cannot ever control other people, ever. All you can control is yourself. Your thoughts, your actions, your feelings, your assessments, your perspective. Like, that's all you have control over, ever. Because we can influence people, influence our kids, influence, you know, like whatever you can influence, it gives us this delusion that influence is control. And it's an illusion. Because once that aspect that no longer wants to be influenced, no longer consents to being influenced, no longer can see the hidden dynamics at play, they release consent, and then you no longer can influence. You know, influence takes two to tango. And it's like when there's, once that's played out, it's played out already. The illusion is exposed to you. You now see that, wow, I don't actually have control over that. And it brings it back home. Like, you gotta bring it on home. Only you can control you. So like, I feel like, you know, working out, right? Just moving. In my mind, it's kind of like to lose weight. Like, that's the whole intention in a way. But it's like, if you focus too much on the intention, on the outcome, right? You cannot control outcomes either. That's outside of your control. You can influence outcomes, but you can't ever control it. So you should never place your reason on an external aspect. It'll create confusion. It'll make you feel like it's not working. It's, you know, because if this doesn't shift, like, it's almost like looking at metrics too much. If you have a lot of followers, a lot of subscribers or whatever, but you're not able to to influence in the way where it can feed you, does it even matter? It's kind of like that. It's like, shit, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, outcomes, right? If you don't focus on the outcomes, and it's a win right here in the now, a here and now win. Moving my body, feeling like the energy flowing, like feeling more flexible, not as tight, right? Like my back would get sore when you sit too long. And it's like to walk, to move, like you're already winning. You're already moving, energy is flowing. And the more you do it, the more your thoughts can get on board, and then your thoughts can follow. Then your feelings can follow, right? Like that marriage. Thoughts and feelings can follow the body's actions, the doing, the movement, the intention, the desire to, I gotta get this energy moving in my body flowing. I gotta get these thoughts flowing. I gotta purge this like stagnant energy. Like I can just look at how my body's even shaped. Like my legs are pretty slim. And it's just like this concentrated weight. Here, 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 here. You know, the limbs are, comparatively on the slim side. And it's just this apple. And then you can look into why that is, right? There's certain body types and yada yada. I don't really feel compelled to look into it that much in that aspect for some reason. But if I were to look and think patterns, think overarching esoteric explanations, you can kind of see how it's just a stagnant, stuck, not moving, glued, gluttony. Like, you know, it's like when you sit and feed the mind, all you're doing is just thinking. You're thinking, you're playing with ideas, you're thinking of all this kind of stuff. Like, and what if it sticks to you? And it's like you can't even fully communicate it. You can't express it in any meaningful way because it's stagnant. And it's like to get it to flow, to move, and to say something of value for someone, for yourself, just like serving your destiny, serving a higher goal, serving the collective. Like you can't serve the collective in this stagnant pool. Like it's just like pooling. When you look into it, it's just pools in this area. And like, take yourself out, right? Instead of being identified with, oh my God, you're picking apart my body, right? It's just like, look at the bigger picture of it. And it's like, it's a state. It's a path. It's a point along the way. And it's like when you see it, you see the bigger call of what you're being asked to do, to move, to communicate, to speak, to own where you are. Confusion, unclear, unsure, don't know. And like to do that while the whole world is telling you that that's a mistake, that's wrong. You have to know what you're talking about. You have to be an expert. You have to project authority, like all this kind of stuff. You have to get to the point. You can't meander around on the subject, like all these things. It's just like, it feels like the Matrix kind of is pulling you away from your destiny by convincing you that it's wrong. It's not right. That's the right way. Authority, knowing, certainty, confusion, bad, clarity, good. And I feel that in my bones. Confusion, bad, clarity, good. But it's like, clearly, my destiny has something to do with leaning into confusion and speaking on it. Even though the whole world is saying, don't fucking do that. Nobody cares. Like, okay, so be it. But something feels right. Like something in me feels right doing that. And it's like when I realized the effect of the South-North Node, it put that into perspective. Then this morning, I was listening to this guy's channel. I think his name is Tom's Astrology or something. And like he talks kind of like how I think, which was like, it resonated with me. I liked listening to him. And I could see how, you know, he didn't have a ton of views, he didn't have a ton of subscribers, but it was like, I get it. Like, he totally speaks my language, and I felt very pulled to it. Like, I felt like I could learn from him. Like, I felt just very on the same wavelength. And it was like watching him, how he explains things. It's like he can get very, like, you know what he's talking about, but he doesn't say it in a very authoritarian, direct, clear way. It's like he kind of meanders. He kind of, you know, has filler words. Like there's a hinge to it that's uncertainty with knowledge. Like uncertainty with knowledge. Like, what a paradox, right? But I feel like that's what the Gemini Sagittarius axis is about. And I don't know, watching his video, it just made me feel like a little more permission. Like there was like permission that, wow, I'm watching it. I'm totally resonating with. I subscribed. I want to watch more of his videos. It's like, if you were to base it on a metric of views and subscribers, you would think valueless. There's nothing to see there, or else other people would have liked it, you know? And like, that's the thing too, right? You can get into that frame of mind where it's like, if it's not popular, it's worthless. And like, imagine you're trying to build something, you're trying to share, and you're trying to grow something, while in the back of your mind feeling like things that don't have attention or popularity are valueless. Like, no wonder you're gonna quit eventually. Because you yourself don't find value in the very thing you're doing. Because you're basing it on the masses. The masses don't think like this. They don't get me. So why would I even share? Or like, what's the point? You know, like you can get into that kind of all or nothing, nihilistic, skeptical, don't waste your time, nobody cares type of a space. And I don't know how to explain it, but watching that guy's videos, seeing his metrics, he kept going. Like, I think he started maybe 3-4 years ago or something. He has a bunch of videos, and it's like, I see value in him, in his way of teaching, his way of thinking. He goes more deep, like on the esoteric side of astrology, and it just totally is ringing my bell, you know what I mean? Like, and it gave me this sort of clarity, or this permission to, you know, just own how I want to talk. Like, I talk in a meandering way, in a wandering way, and that is Gemini. Like, I can talk in a teacher preachy kind of way, but like I get the, I don't know, something in me knows that like that's overplayed, and like I gotta put that on the side and lean into the student, the unknown, the unclear, the confusion. And you know, I just feel more clarity on just be the doer in the body. Your mind is gonna try and listen to the masses, try and make sense, try and be logical, rational. And it's gonna say, no, don't do that, nobody even cares. Stop, it's embarrassing, oh, cringy. You know, it's gonna give you all those kinds of things to try and like suppress that flow of what wants to come out. And you can't self-betray like that and get anywhere. You just can't. Like, you're fighting yourself. Internal civil war. It leads to just nothing but massacre. So it's like, but I really, really feel astrology was such a huge validating factor is what it is. It's a validating factor. Instead of looking into the masses to validate what you're doing, right? It's almost like you look to the blueprint to give you insight on why you have certain challenges, why certain things are hard, why you feel pulled to do certain things. Like these energies that are reflected in the planets and the signs and all that stuff, it's merely a reflection of the energies that are at play within you and what has the most dominating effect, like all that kind of stuff. So I'm not sure where it's gonna go, if it's gonna go, but I do see, you know, getting value from that guy's channel. it's like I appreciate the fact that he continued to do it. Even though he wasn't getting externally validated with millions of views or thousands of views even, like he still kept going, he still kept doing this. Like he was probably answering a call that he was being pulled to do with no external validation that what you're doing is right. Only your internal feeling of like, I like this, I love this feels good, this feels right. Like that's the only thing you have to judge whether what you're doing is right or wrong. And it's like you cannot negate that internal feeling of right and wrong based on what other people outside tell you. That's not how you're supposed to do it. That's wrong. Nobody cares about that. You gotta talk like, like, I don't know, and I'm still trying to navigate that balance because it's not like you totally ignore the world's advice. It's like nuanced. You take it in at certain times, you maybe make certain adjustments, but you keep your foundation, the foundation, right? What you feel called to do, what feels aligned inside, and like you can make adjustments on what feels aligned without betraying that inner alignment. Like it's that subtle, slight edge. And like that's the whole game. Finding those areas where it's very pertinent that you balance it, that you honor both sides, that you try to navigate it in whatever houses that are showing you to whatever end your destiny is calling you towards. Like I'm thinking of maybe, when they say niche down, right? I can kind of see where my niche would be, focusing on the Gemini North Node. Like that's my niche because that's what I feel so pulled to figure out, because that's such a new revelation to me that kind of it shows up in other areas, in other dynamics. That very Sagittarius South Node, karma-ish, what you come in knowing. You don't, I don't know. But, I don't know, Gemini North Node, maybe it's to lean into the, I don't know, we'll see. We'll figure it out. Feeling around, right? That whole, once you start declaring that you know, and it's only this way, and it's only one way, like now you're getting into preaching again. Now you're going back to your comfort zone in the South Node of Sagittarius. You gotta start slowly walking towards the middle, and then trying to lean it over more towards the Gemini side. Being curious, asking, listening, getting knowledge from the mundane. See, that's another aspect that I feel very, what's the point of that? Like, I hate small talk. I hate like little getting to know, like that's just so icky feeling for me. And clearly, where you feel the ick is probably where you gotta go, right? It's the gold that the dragon in that area that you feel uncomfortable going, it's hiding gold. It's hiding your fulfillment, the destiny that you came here to have an adventure towards getting. And I don't know how this is gonna play out with little one-to-one interaction. Like I don't know how I'm gonna do that without literally walking out. Like, where would you go? I don't know. Like that kind of stuff is not clear right now. But I feel like if I remain open, then open and willing to do the uncomfortable, then a path will show itself. Like just one step, like just one little step. Like, oh, I can see I can do that. Like I was thinking earlier, I could lean into action because I can think from both sides. Like I can think from the curious, unknown student, and then the wise advising teacher. Like I was thinking of maybe doing like a 2-in-1, like the two of the seeker and knower can play out in the one. There can't be more Gemini than that, right? Done on the 11th house collective internet. I don't know, like that feels like a step. That feels like a an avenue, like one little step, a possibility. And like I can't help but feel compelled to take that step, and we'll see how that works out, what that looks like. But I do feel like, you know, with the mutable energy, right? It's very flighty, very changey, free, doesn't want to get pinned down, like that type of thing. It almost like you need some earth, right? Some grounding, which Mercury is in Taurus for me. So maybe that brings in some solidity where I can make it more concrete. Like, because when you have a flighty, mutable energy, right? You need a little earth or some Saturn, some like limitation of like holding down. I don't know. Kind of see how that plays out, but you know, day 2, walking and talking, feel like I'm moving my body, mutable energy, movement, communicating. Taurus, throat chakra, Mercury, communication, like honoring that, while being confused. I don't even know what the fuck I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where this is gonna lead, but I just feel compelled to follow that tiny little wisp of clarity without being 100% clear and like, I know the way. 1.98, almost at 2 miles. Wow, 51 minutes. Oh, if you're here, day 2, on this rock, fist pump. It's 2 miles. 2 miles at 2.3 miles per hour, 6th grade. 52 minutes, 22 seconds.